Okay, welcome back to another episode of Football Weekly. And Uzzi, we made it 2 weeks in a row, so I'm proud of that. A really, really good week, I think, to cover some of the games in the Premier League because, a couple of big fixtures, a lot of excitement, a lot of consequential games, I would say. But first of all, how are you doing?
Very well, Humzah. Look forward to discuss what was a very hectic and chaotic weekend of Premier League action.
It was honestly a brilliant weekend of football. And I think let's start with the game that's probably fresh in our heads on Sunday night, Liverpool Man City. This is always a great game. I don't know the fixtures off the top of my head, but obviously Liverpool Man City, the two dominant teams in the 2020s. And this was, I think a good game. Sort of, I would say in general, Man City, with the better team in that first half. Liverpool, better team in the second half, but there wasn't too much in it. And then, from 84th minute on, it just really kicked into action, and we got a lot of action to cover in this game. But to start with, Uzzi, how did you see this game?
I think you more or less summed it up, quite well there. I think it was like a tale of two halves, except the fact that it didn't perhaps end in a draw, which I think would have been had it been the case, it would have been a tale of two halves. And I believe it was to an extent. I think, as you said, City more or less completely dominated the first half. Had some, without really testing Alisson. Okay, I mean, I know Haaland had that chance early on when he was obviously played into the penalty area, but that was the only meaningful save he had to make off the top of my head. But they pretty much enjoyed majority of the possession, had the better of the play. Defense weren't really under too much pressure. For Mark he was absolutely brilliant. Obviously could have easily been playing on the other side had things gone to plan back in the summer. But no, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And I thought City as a whole in that first half were just outstanding. And even though, despite maybe not working Alisson as much as a lot of people perhaps maybe thought so, they really should have made their superiority count. But it didn't matter too much in the end. They managed to obviously emerge 2-1 winners. On the other hand, thought Liverpool in that second half were far improved. When a goal up, an absolute worldie from Dominic Szoboszlai. Had some good opportunities as well. I think Ekitike should have done a lot better with that free header. I think it was at 0-0. And then there was that break on where he could have passed to Wirtz on the right. He would have got a shot away, and that might have been 2-0, perhaps game over. But that was a huge turning point in yesterday's game. You saw City at the end, obviously. I mean, had a little bit of luck with the equaliser. I mean, with that deflection, with the cross. Obviously, good opportunity. It was actually brilliant opportunism from Bernardo Silva. Sometimes you just got to make that run. Even if Szoboszlai did play him onside. And then just really rash decision making from Alisson, which ultimately cost Liverpool at least a point. It's right towards the end, and obviously Erling Haaland, very rarely misses from the spot, did his job, and City managed to get the win, which ultimately does put the pressure back on Arsenal's shoulders. But I don't think they'll be too. I think just quickly going on to Arsenal, I don't think they'll be too. Of course, they would have been annoyed that obviously Liverpool couldn't do them a favour, but hey, it happens. You can't control what another team does. You just got to focus on yourselves.
And I know you love just as much as me seeing limbs in the away section, and away section was going crazy, but I loved Sky's shot of Haaland celebrating that penalty and running, and they got up close. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I want to say, looking at the table after this weekend, we are getting down to edging somewhat closer to 30 games, the more business end of the season. And Liverpool have dropped 4 points behind fifth place Chelsea. 4 points isn't the end of the world, right? Especially with the teams above them, Chelsea, Man United and Aston Villa. It's not like you have huge confidence in any of them. Man United, we'll talk about a bit later on, some good form. But should Liverpool be a little bit worried about their top 5 hopes, or do you reckon they can get this back on track?
Well, I mean, they should be worried. Obviously, they've dropped a lot of points that you'd expect them to, that you would have expected them to win. You go back to that you go back to Fulham and Burnley in January, obviously, led in both games, ended up obviously drawing both. That's 4 points, drop right there. If you had them on, they'd be level with Chelsea. So just goes to show you how damaging those drop points could be come the end of the season. Look, there are plenty of twists and turns to come. I think Liverpool still have to go to Old Trafford. They still have to welcome Chelsea to Anfield. I think their final away game of the season is at Aston Villa, which could be a massive game as far as Champions League qualification goes. So I wouldn't rule them out right yet, but with the way that the way it's going, the way it's all, more or less going for them, I think it is. I think you do have to worry for them at this stage, particularly at this stage of the season. There's three and a bit months to go. They are still in the Champions League, but ultimately, they're not favourites to win that competition. I mean, a lot better teams, than them in there still. Still in the FA Cup, but ultimately, I think their priority is to get back into the Champions League for next season. They're going to have to really start. I mean, I know it's easier said than done. The fans have probably had this conversation, pretty much every week. But ultimately, they're gonna have to start going on a run, try and pick up some points. Sunderland on Wednesday, the only team or the only Premier League team still yet to lose a home game, so they're certainly gonna have their work cut out there. Particularly without a fit right back. Then they go to Forest away, a team fighting for their lives. West Ham at home, okay, home, but West Ham, they picked up form of late. Wolves away, Tottenham at home. These are games that they really ought to be picking up points in. So it's going to be a very intense, well, for them especially, a very intense few weeks. But they need to start putting together a run of wins quickly very soon.
And I know you love a good stat as well. This is the latest point Liverpool have led a Premier League game in the 84th minute and lost. So, you mentioned it's really going to hurt them to lose this game. It really will hurt them to lose this game at home. And it's the first time Man City have won at Anfield with fans, because they did win in 2021, I believe, when the stadium wasn't full. It's the first time that they won with fans since 2003, or we can say the second time that they've won at Anfield in 23 years, right? So it's huge for Man City, and I think huge credit to them, because to come back with 2 late goals at Anfield, which is a really difficult place for any team. I know Liverpool have lost a lot of games at Anfield, or dropped points at Anfield this season, but when big teams go there, it's always a big thing when they pick up points. And Man City didn't let their heads drop. I think, forget the Arsenal side of it, forget maybe even the title side of it. I think Man City will take huge confidence from that comeback. 2 goals in the last, one in the last minute, and then obviously getting that penalty at 95. They'll take a lot from it. Man City, I mean, you spoke about Liverpool's difficult game at Sunderland coming up on Wednesday. That's going to be a fantastic game. I cannot wait to watch that. But Fulham, who Man City have next, Fulham have lost 18 straight games against Man City in all competitions. That's the longest losing run between 2 English sides ever. So listen, talk about shocks that could happen this midweek. That would really be one. So yeah, I think this game is more about, or going after this game, it's going to be more about how Liverpool respond against Sunderland. They could very well lose against Sunderland, and potentially Chelsea or United or Villa lose, right? I don't have huge confidence that they're always going to win their games. They're not on amazing runs, especially Villa. United are obviously on a great run, but Liverpool are just I think their biggest thing is getting their top players back in form, because Salah has not been on form. Van Dijk not been on form. Alisson made that mistake. He just needs to get his head right. I still think he's a top keeper, but I think that's going to be the key for them. If they can keep their players fit and just get Salah and Van Dijk to decent form, because there's still a huge positive in Liverpool, which is Szoboszlai. I thought he was brilliant this game. He has been excellent this season. He's got 9 goals and 7 assists in the league. He's got 4 direct free kick goals this season. I want to ask you, that's the most by a Liverpool player since 2012-2013 season. Do you know who that player was who got more? I think he got 5 that season.
Steven Gerrard?
Foreign forward, I'll put it that way.
Oh, Suarez,
yeah. So, and he scored absolutely brilliant free kicks. So, yeah, I think Ekitike he missed that great chance, but they just need to get some of the players back on form, and they're more than good enough to get into that top 5. But let's move on, because you're the perfect person I want to ask this question to, and it's on Man U versus Tottenham. So obviously United win 2-0, Brian Mbeumo, I should say, getting the goal at 50th minute from a really clever set piece, actually. Really enjoyed that from United. And then Bruno Fernandes continuing his amazing season, getting a goal in the 68th. But obviously a big turning point in this match, which we will discuss with the Romero red card. But I want to ask you, Spurs fans, they have a lot to be disappointed on at the moment, and in general with the club over the last few years. Ownership, they're really not happy with. We know this. And there's obviously a lot of heat directed at Thomas Frank. You're a Brentford fan. You were a Brentford fan before Thomas Frank came in for those 7 years. I want to ask you, knowing Tottenham and more importantly, knowing Frank, is Frank the right guy for Tottenham? Do you think he's a good enough manager for them to stick with?
It's really difficult. I remember just going back to obviously Frank. I think whenever you say that the fact, sometimes, for example, I'll give you an example. I think there was a moment where I can't remember who was against, but I remember Chelsea were, I think, West Ham, Chelsea West Ham last week. Where, obviously Chelsea went 2-0 down. They were booed off, and Liam Rossini was asked, look, what did you think of that? And he said, look, we deserved it. He didn't have a go at the fans or anything like that. I remember when I think they lost to Fulham at home back at the end of November, and I think there were boos in that game. He said, oh, they're not like real supporters and all that. I mean, look, they pay, I think that they've got the most expensive season tickets in the Premier League. These guys pay a lot of money to watch with, really turgid, unattractive football. Look, they're not demanding they win the Premier League or, the Champions League. They just want to see a team who, just play good football and, try and, do their best every game, right? They're not demanding like too much, right? And I think that a lot, and from what I've seen particularly on social media, and I've spoken to, obviously one of my good friends who is a Tottenham fan. The impression he gave me was the fact that Frank hasn't really bought into it. Like, he's not really, merged this, not like for example, like Klopp with the Liverpool fans, for example. He hasn't been embraced by the fans. And when you make comments like, they're not real fans and they booed after what was a very poor performance against Fulham, and I think they've had others as well. Oh, a lot more others. You're never really going to be accepted. Now, and I remember Paul Merson said this on, I think it was on Soccer Saturday. I think a week after, Frank made those comments, and he said that. And this is, by the way, this is a Chelsea supporting Arsenal legend saying this. So when he says this, like the word stick. He said that obviously how like loyal the fans are. They pay a lot of money. You've got adults and paying God knows how much to take their kids to football. They want to see like their team go out, be on the front foot, right? They don't want to see the sides, when you've got, with respect, when you've got teams like, I don't know, Fulham, Brentford come to your stadium, you don't want to be like playing on the back foot. You don't want to be playing, make sure you take the game to them, right? Go for, keep going. Okay, you go a goal up, go for the second goal. Don't sit back at 1-0. And that's my thing with Frank is and I think from just one thing I've seen in general is the fact that he's not at Brentford anymore. You can't afford to, be pragmatic in matches. You're at Tottenham, they demand, good football. Maybe not win every week, but at least, put in a good performance, go out with some pride. I've seen Tottenham teams in the past lose matches and, not get booed off by their own supporters. I just think with Frank, he just needs to. I think he has been unlucky with injuries as well. I think losing Maddison in pre-season, I think 2 weeks before the start of the season.
On that point, Uzzi, on injuries, I just want to add to your point. I've got a list of the players who are out at the moment, right? Maddison, Bentancur, Kudus, Davies, Bergvall, Udogi, Richarlison, Pedro Porro, Jed Spence, Danzo, and then obviously Romero now. I mean, I was having a look at that. That's basically a starting 11. that's out for him. That's one thing he's got to deal with. That just on that point of injuries.
Yeah. I think Kulusevski as well. I mean, he hasn't played since.
I forgot about him.
Yeah. Because he hasn't played, I think, since May last year, and then that was like
And I
a
think
week
he's out for
before
the
that.
rest of the season, I just read.
Well, I mean, the fact that he wasn't selected in their Champions League squad for the knockouts. Well, I mean, however far they go in the competition, the fact that he wasn't put in should more or less tell you everything. So, it's obviously unfortunate for him. Again, I mean, as I said, he's been unfortunate with injuries, but look, we've seen many managers make do with what they've got. Well, I remember, I think the season after Liverpool, I know obviously it was much different. Liverpool are a lot better then a few years ago than what Tottenham are now. But I remember when what was it? Klopp had to, I think, go. I think when he lost his centre half and he lost Van Dijk, obviously when he had that really bad injury, and then he had to play players like Nat Phillips and Reece Williams in defence, and I think Fabinho had to do a few shifts at centre half as well. It wasn't ideal, but he had to get through it. And but this Tottenham squad is, I mean, they are, as I said, they've been completely decimated by injuries. But at the same time, it's not a team that should be 14th in the Premier League. They should be doing a lot better. No one's saying that they should be up there with Arsenal, but perhaps at least be in the top 7 or top 8, not 14th below, sides like, for example, Palace, particularly who have gone through a lot of upheaval with, Oliver Glasner leaving, and the fact that I think yesterday was their first win in 12 matches in all competitions. And also, that's no disrespect to them, but just giving, providing a little bit of context. He does need to do better. I was a little bit surprised by their January window. I thought they would have maybe got 1 or 2 players in. Actually, they did get Conor Gallagher in, which I think, will be a good signing for them. I think he gives them a little bit of bite and guile in midfield. But in the meantime, it's still a squad that you would say is very threadbare and very thin. But he's going to have to make do with it for the rest of the season. He's going to have to find a way to, try and navigate Tottenham for a very sticky period. But perhaps one thing I'll give Frank is that he is very resilient. He had a very similar period 2 years ago when we were completely decimated with injuries, and we were slipping down the table. But he managed to, once 1 or 2 slightly came back, and then things started to be better again. Thankfully, we managed to go on a run and obviously finish the season well. You'd like to hope for it. In Tottenham's case, they like to hope that will be the case, but it will be but it is going to be a very sticky next few weeks for them, because obviously Newcastle at home tomorrow is that's a must win for them. The Newcastle have not been convincing of late. We'll speak about their game against Brentford shortly, but no. And obviously the small match of the North London derby in 2 weeks. So that's going to be a really interesting one as well. But they've got some games that I think Newcastle tomorrow. Forget about Arsenal. That's not for 2 weeks. They've got to win tomorrow, and they've really got to like Liverpool, put a good run.
I think you're right. At this point for Tottenham, it's about picking up wins. It's just about picking up wins. They cannot linger in that part of the table for too long. And they finished 17th last season. I don't think, as you mentioned, I don't think Tottenham fans were expecting miracles. I don't think they were expecting Champions League this season, maybe not even Europa League, but you want to at least see that jump into the top half of the table, which they've not done at all, and they don't really look close to doing it. They've not won a game in 7 league games now, only 6 points above the relegation zone. Not that they're in relegation threat, but just to give a context on where they are in the league, right? So, yeah, for them, for Frank, it's a lot of pressure, these upcoming games. Want to talk also just briefly about the Romero red card. I don't want to spend too long on it because it is what it is. Do you think it was a red card?
I mean, it was pretty, I think he went in with pretty full force, which, look, I think was the right decision. But having said that, I have seen some tweets, and from what I saw, and obviously the photos I saw, and of course the live angle on the TV, how was it any different to Dalot and Doku a few weeks ago?
Yeah,
I mean, but I'm not saying the Romero decision was wrong. I mean, it was right, but at least be a bit more consistent. Right, if that was rightfully a red card, that should have been a red card. Consistency is all we ask for.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll just talk on the Man United side, because it's now wins at against Tottenham, against Man City, and against Arsenal for Carrick. And we expect when a new manager comes in a bounce. Typically that happens, right, for many reasons that we already know. But I don't want to go on about Amorim because that's in the past now. But I think what good new managers do, especially ones that come in midway through the season, is they know they can't change the philosophy or the way teams play very quickly, and it's just about getting results. And I think what Carrick's done, the most basic thing is he's just looked at the players he has, and he's thought, what's their best positions? Pretty simple, right? He's looked at his best player, which is Bruno. His best position is in attacking midfield, where he doesn't have to do this defensive work. He's looked at Amad Diallo, who is, I think, one of the most underrated players in and amongst the top teams, right, in terms of what he provides to his team. And he says, forget this right wing back shenanigans. Let's play him at right wing. And then, he's got a back four. He's not got wing backs. Amorim thought that Mazwari and Dallo and Diallo were wing backs. They're not. Right, Diallo's obviously a winger, and he's got his fullbacks in Shaw and Mazwari and Dallo, who are fullbacks. They're not wing backs, and he's put them there. He's got two centre backs that are capable of playing at centre back without being in a three, and he's managed to incorporate Mainu, who, yes, Mainu has been a little bit disappointing in the last couple of seasons. He's not forced his way into the team, but he's still such a quality player. Everyone sees it. And I still think back to the Euros with England. I always say, I think he's the main reason, actually, England got to the final. Honestly, when he came in for Trent in that midfield, he changed everything. And now he's playing Maino in a DM position next to Casemiro, who's having a really good season. I really like this Cunha and the way he's using Cunha and Mbeumo, because both those players actually fit into the 3-4-3. Cunha played in that left attacking mid position, and Mbeumo can play in those either attacking mid positions or at striker. So, and actually watching the game, one of the things that he did, and I saw this on the analysis afterwards is that Cunha started at striker, but he dropped quite deep with Bruno. And so they almost played like a two attacking mids and really helped their link up play, and a lot of quick attacks came from it. So I think that the way he's playing now, it also suits Man United. You think of Man United and you think of kind of getting in behind, playing down the wings, playing quick football. It's what the fans love. So they love what's going on at the moment. Will Man U win every single game from now until the end of the season? Probably not. But has Carrick done everything right? Yes, he has. And it's put them in a great spot. It's put them right into that Champions League battle, which I don't think fans would have expected 5 games ago when Amorim left. So, massive credit to them. And yeah, I thought they were calm and pretty clinical, really, after that red card. And yeah, again, just listen, credit to Bruno. I think we can have this discussion in later podcasts when it gets towards the 30-game mark on who the Premier League player of the season is. Bruno's up there. Bruno's got to be in that top 3 shortlist, and he's on 12 league assists at the moment. He's coming for that Henry record, and he'd deserve it, honestly. And a lot of those assists came when he was playing in that centre mid position in a 3-4-3, not even in his attacking mid position.
Do you know which game his first assist came in?
This season? The Arsenal game?
Maguire's winner at Anfield.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
There's one for you.
And that's one thing about Bruno. He does not shy away at all. Love him or hate him for it. I know a lot of United fans had a lot of, issues with him over the last couple seasons because he tried a lot. But at least that's one thing, he tries a lot. So credit to Bruno. But Uzzi, let's move on to what looked like for a little while that it may be the game of the weekend, and maybe it still is. Newcastle 2, Brentford 3. You watched this game. How did it go? Talk us through Brentford continuing this amazing run that they're on.
An absolutely incredible win, an incredible performance. Well-deserved win as well. Absolutely brilliant for 90 minutes. Even, started the game really well. Should have had a penalty, actually, after 90 seconds. I'm sure I don't know if you saw it on the highlights. Literally, I don't know how Trippier wasn't sent off for that, because it was the denial of a clear goal scoring opportunity. I know people have said that, the ball hit Lewis Potter's knee. Even though whilst he was running in on goal, the ball hit his knee, which had gone on the other side, which meant that he wouldn't have got to it. but he was still being tugged back in the box. So that, I mean, it should have been a penalty. I mean, we were quite hard done by there. But obviously, we went 1-0 down. Obviously, a bit of a sloppy corner to give away. Not great defending for it. I mean, Botman he was like on the right hand side, and he just managed to just get. I mean, it wasn't even a bullet header. It just skid, came off. Obviously, just peeled off his head, and obviously ended up going in, which obviously was annoying because I thought Brentford started the game very well, and obviously ended up going 1-0 down. But obviously got it back to 1-1, and a brilliant cross by Dango Guittara for Vitali Yanal's equaliser. I mean, because he was he's left-footed. He was on the left wing, but it was an absolutely brilliant ball into the penalty area, and it was just Nick Pope had no chance with that. And then, thankfully, just before the break, obviously got that penalty, which Igor Thiago managed to score from. I believe that's 17 now for the season in the Premier League. So hopefully it continues at this rate. We might have our first ever player in the PFA Team of the Year, hopefully. So it's not really good for him to get back amongst the goals. And obviously got Newcastle, and then from the start of the second half, for the first half an hour, Brentford were more or less in control. Newcastle didn't really have too many opportunities. To be fair, neither did Brentford. It was 2-1, but they looked very comfortable defensively. But ultimately, one break, one lapse in concentration and communication, and then they suddenly have Newcastle suddenly break away. Osula, I mean, I'm not sure why he didn't play in Guimaraes on the right. He ended up going to the left, and then to put the ball in, obviously intended for Guimaraes, and then I thought the penalty was very soft. I don't think Coyote touched him. It's one of them where you've got a player running in, you're behind him, and then it's a bit of a leg tangle, but it's not enough for me to give it, which I think was I thought that was wasn't very harsh, but a bit soft if you ask me. Would have been given outside the box? Maybe not. Unfortunately, it was given. Obviously, they equalised from it. And obviously, it was 2-2 with under 50 minutes to go at a ground you hadn't won at in 92 years. You're like, oh god, it's like you have to weather a storm here. But just all it takes, Humzah, in these sort of games is just one moment. Football is a moment's game, and once Jensen put that ball into Ouattara on the hard volley, absolutely leathered it past Nick Pope, and 3-2. And a deserved goal, because I thought Brentford's performance completely merited all 3 points. I thought they were brilliant against the side who, playing in the Champions League this season, done reasonably well in it. They're in the knockout playoffs against Carrick. But I thought Brentford made them look very ordinary. And I thought they were completely deserving of their win. And of course, they'll take a lot of confidence from that going into these next 3 months.
What I like about what Keith Andrews has done is that he, similar to we just spoke about Carrick playing to a team's strengths, I was looking at some of the stats, and 14.3% of your passes, Brentford's passes, are long balls, as in over 35 yards. Only Burnley play more long balls than you. You're playing to your player's strength. Igor Thiago, really good at holding up the ball, really good at getting in behind. I mean, how many goals have we seen from Igor Thiago running in behind, or you guys kind of getting past the back line and a square ball and scoring? And even Shada, I know that he didn't play this game because he got that red card, but playing to his strengths and Utara's strengths, right? So I really like that from Andrews. We've spoken, we've waxed lyrical about Brentford over the last couple of weeks. We've spoken about how they've lost certain key players, the manager, the captain, and what they're doing right now, what you guys are playing for. I mean, let's see how it goes. It is still early in, midway through the season. There's a lot of games to play and a lot of pressure to come, but you're in the hunt for European places, and that would be pretty incredible, I imagine, as a Brentford fan.
It'd be incredible. Europa League, Conference League, you'd bite your hand off for either. But I think, with Brentford, they have been here before. I should mention that. They just need to take one game at a time. I know it's very easy because, you've got there can be noise around you, but the more points you pick up, and obviously teams around you might start dropping points, people can get overexcited. They just need to keep their head, just keep your feet on the ground, just keep going one game at a time, 13 games left. 7 home games left. Every home game is a cup final, pretty much until now, between now and the end of the season. After Arsenal, you've got some very winnable home games. Winning them should, I'm not necessarily should, but will go a long way to, help securing your dream, or which would be European football. As I said, you just got to take it one game at a time. Brentford has some very tough away games as well coming up, or particularly towards the back end of the season. Obviously, at the last 3 are against United, City, and Liverpool, which will be very tough. So no need. I'm not going to be not too overexcited. Just keeping, remaining humble and grounded. As I said, 13 games to go. Many teams who we're going to be up against are going to be fighting for something. Which, maybe actually might play into Brentford's hands like that, because they do, when they're not, expected to, win games like Villa away last weekend, for example. It actually, it really, those are the games they thrive in. Whereas in the past, they've missed really big opportunities to make big strides, and ultimately that has cost them, recent seasons. So I think with these guys, it's all about just keep being grounded, keep being humble, and just simply taking one game at a time between now and the end of the season.
Absolutely. And I think on the Newcastle side of it's not been the best season for Newcastle so far. Finishing 5th last season, but they're in 12th at the moment. And I think you still give Howe some leeway, and some of the signings haven't really hit the ground as they'd have liked, and some players dropping form, notably Anthony Gordon. Elanga not playing up to what I thought he would be at Newcastle. Still early days, but Newcastle, they've taken the lead 15 times this season. They've lost 5 of those games, right? Dropping in total 19 points from positions that they could have gone on to draw and win the game. That's the worst in the league. So they're struggling to close out games. I would give Howe some leeway, and let's see what they can do in the Champions League. They did have a brilliant season last season, and of course they lost their top goal scorer and their best player in Alexander Isak. But they're another one of those teams that if they want to reach Europe again, they're going to have to start putting their foot on the pedal. But let's talk about who Brentford have next. We'll talk about that game, Arsenal against Brentford, at the end of this. But let's talk about the Arsenal side of this weekend and a 3-0 win against Sunderland. And Uzzi, it would be really easy for me to sit here and say, great game from Arsenal, did what we needed to do, clean sheet, 3 goals, Gyökeres scored 2 goals, that's a positive. And those are all positives, right? I'm not going to say otherwise, right? But I would say I didn't learn anything new about Arsenal this game. I sort of knew, watching the game, I knew how they would play, and they did play. But I have to bring up some concerns now, right? Even though, as a caveat, people watching this think, Arsenal, top of the league, top of Champions League, into the final of the Carabao Cup, in the FA Cup at the moment. What's there to complain about? There's nothing to complain about, but there are some things, and you know this watching your team and everyone watching their team. You notice things watching 90 minutes of your team every single week. And I would say Arsenal breaking down teams isn't the best thing I've seen in the world, to put it lightly. I think we play very slow, methodical football, which has pros to it. It is very risk adverse. We talk about Arsenal not being a great attacking team, even though they have the second most goals from open play this season. But what Arsenal is difficult, because if you have a look at some of the title winning teams over the last 20 years, often what they have is they have one really clinical, world-class striker having a great season. Arsenal don't have that in their squad. It's not that players are off form. They just don't really have a Mo Salah, a Luis Suarez, a Sergio Aguero, a Erling Haaland, a player that can do things special at any moment.
Ronaldo.
But what they do have, Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, you can go back. Honestly, you make this point. You can go back all the Premier League winners, right? At least in my memory, they have someone special in attack. Arsenal don't have that. But what they do have is 6 attackers, maybe 7 if you include Havertz up there, who are good enough. And that's why Arsenal's strength this season will come in making substitutions at the right time, i.e. Gyökeres coming on for Jesus, who had an all right first half, but then Gyökeres comes on and he gets those 2 goals. So that's where Arsenal's strength is. My slight concern with Arsenal is that when we go behind in a game, we still play that quite risk-adverse football. Obviously, that didn't happen against Sunderland, but it did happen against United. And we don't really play. We play almost the same patterns of play, but just a little bit faster when we go behind. So I'm really curious with Arsenal in games that will come up from now to the end of the season in the Premier League and the Champions League, if we do go 1-0 behind, even 2-0 behind, that's when you need some players to take a little bit of a risk. And I'd like to see some of our players develop that tendency, even if it means ignoring Arteta, to take a little bit of a risk. I saw Eze do that when he came on. Does he feel comfortable doing it with Arteta probably telling him to keep the ball and play how they've practiced of playing on the wings and maybe putting a ball in the box? Obviously, you play like that for 90 minutes. You start the game at 0-0, you play that like that for 90 minutes and you keep clean sheets. You're going to find a way to break through teams. It's very unlike Arsenal to end a game 0-0. They will find some way to break a team down. But when the urgency's on, that's when I have a little bit of concern for Arsenal. But again, nothing negative to say about this game. It's just something I've picked up, and I just wanted to go off a different angle instead of praising Arsenal, because there was a lot to say right about this game. Zubimendi and Rice, they've been absolutely brilliant this season. They've made mistakes, but they've made mistakes when they're tired, especially Zubimendi. He's made mistakes in games when he's tired for the most part, and I'm not going to blame him for that because we don't really have a rotation. We have your guy, Norgard, who every Arsenal fan wants to see play more minutes, not necessarily because of Norgard, but we want to see Rice and Zubimendi get a bit of a rest. Zubimendi's doing all the work at the moment. I think he's played 2,700 minutes for Arsenal in all competitions. That's the most of any Arsenal outfield player. So I would like to see a little bit of rotation. It'll be interesting to see what we do against you guys. I have a feeling we'll still go Rice and Zubimendi in midfield and then rest against Wigan in the FA Cup on the weekend. I think one other positive is Gyökeres. He got 2 goals, and Gyökeres is who he is. All Arsenal fans and anyone who watches football, watches an Arsenal game and sees Gyökeres, we don't see some sort of overly talented striker, and that's completely fine. In my opinion, that's completely fine. We know that with Gyökeres, he's not an Mbappe. He's not even really a Haaland who can. They can score goals that you wouldn't think they would score, or they can, in Mbappe's case, kind of score a goal completely on his own. He's not that. But he's the kind of player I think that he needs confidence. He's always hungry to score goals, but I want that confidence to come in him. And he's got 5 in his last 8. You can see how happy he was to get both goals, especially that second goal against Sunderland on the weekend. So yeah, those are the positives. Those are also some of the things that I picked up from watching Arsenal this season. And they did show against Sunderland, who did show a lot of resilience in this game. 3-0 is probably a bit kind to Arsenal. But onwards and upwards, and there's no pressure at the moment. I don't think pressure on Arsenal. I can't speak on Man City's behalf, but we don't feel pressure from Man City yet, partly because this isn't the Man City of past or Liverpool of last season really pushing you. We don't really feel that pressure yet. It will come, but nevertheless, we did our job. Uzzi, let's go to the other end of the table, and let's talk about Burnley against West Ham. West Ham winning 2-0. West Ham have won 3 of their last 4 games. That's the same number of wins that they had in their previous 21. So they're really picking up some form. Somerville playing really well. First West Ham player since Jesse Lingard in 2021 to score in 5 straight appearances in all competitions. So, they're getting form from maybe a bit of an unlikely source in him. I mean, he's a great player, but we thought it'd all be Bowen, really. Do you reckon this is Burnley out of the Premier League with this result? And do you reckon West Ham have enough to stay in the Premier League?
I think with Burnley, I think they're more or less gone, to be honest, Humzah. I can't see West Ham finishing below them, nor Nottingham Forest or Leeds. So I think Burnley are more or less they're more or less gone, to be honest. And to be honest, I don't even think Wolves are too far behind them either. So I think Burnley are gone, to be honest. But I think with West Ham, obviously, confidence, they'll be obviously flying, as you said, for 3 wins in their last 4. Some have already chipping in with the goals, as you said, scoring in 5 successive games. Obviously, taking that burden off Bowen. Perhaps he's been there star player for many seasons. So it's good for them that they have other players chipping in as well. But I think obviously with West Ham, I think they've got some really big games. I think big games coming up. Man United at home, and I think Bournemouth at home as well. So those are 2 massive games, which could which could more or less make or break their season. I think you go back to the end of the year, the end of last year and the start of this year. They had those 2 home games against Fulham and Nottingham Forest, and they got no points from them. and I thought that would be. I thought they'd be done for, to be honest. To get no points from those two games is like, I mean, that's a massive blow. But as you said, they've really picked up
Especially
form.
the performances in both those games were really, really poor. I remember watching the Nottingham Forest game, their last one, and really, really poor performance. So yeah, not even just the results, but the way they were playing.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it. And I said, I mean, even Fulham at home as well. I mean, their winning goal came from a really bad mistake. And it's Fulham is a game you'd expect to win at home, regardless of where you are on the table, whether you're challenging for Europe or fighting relegation. So to not win those games obviously would have been a huge blow. But they've really turned a corner in recent weeks. I think the gap because I mean they're still in that final relegation place, but I think the gap between them and I think maybe 14th is only 6 points. So it's not they're not like you know they're not like drowning. If you could say that. And they're still very much in the fight for survival. I mean, if they were, I know it's United at home tomorrow, but if they were to get a win there, that really would set the cat amongst the pigeons, especially with Leeds playing Chelsea as well. Could be two huge games tomorrow night in not just with regards to the top five, but also at the bottom as well.
Absolutely. And I think West Ham's priority now, win or draw, just pick up points. Just pick up points. Keep it going. Don't go on a run of losses. 3 wins in their last 4 is absolutely brilliant. Pick up points, even if it's a draw at home to United tomorrow. Just pick up some points, and teams above them, this is the nature of that 14th or 15th to 18th place range, is that no one's consistent in that range, and it just takes you to pick up more points, close that gap to Forest from 3 to 2, or keep it at 3, and just keep the momentum up, I would say. But Uzzi, a couple games that we didn't speak about, I'll go through them. If there's anything you want to add on them, please let me know, or we can go to some of the midweek action that we have. But Villa dropping points, second successive game, 1-1 against Bournemouth. Fulham they were 1-0 up, but Everton with a great comeback. I thought Fulham were really unlucky to lose that game. There's so many chances, but Everton winning 2-1. Chelsea winning 3-1 against Wolves. And then obviously yesterday we had Brighton and Hove Albion losing 1-0 to Palace, which I was quite happy for Palace, just given the turmoil that's happened for them, to get a win. And Sarr coming back from AFCON and picking up where he was. And Munoz obviously coming back in as well. He's been in for the last couple of games, but happy to see them kind of, you don't really want to see them sink after really turbulent January for them. So anything there for you? Any of those games? Or
I think that Wolves Chelsea game you mentioned, Cole Palmer became the first player to score 3 first half hat tricks in the Premier League.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw Bruno.
Did he get? Go on.
Did you see Bruno Fernandes's comment on his Instagram?
On Palmer's? Oh no, what was it?
Yeah, he said, I mean, I can't remember exactly what he said, but I think it was something along the lines of, "Oh, what a player!" And obviously, everyone was getting so excited in the responses, "Oh, Agent Fernandez bringing Palmer to Old Trafford," and all that sort of stuff. No, I think it's just two excellent players. Two excellent players, I'm sure, have a lot of mutual respect and admiration of each other. I didn't really read too much into that, if I'm being honest, but it was a bit of an interesting comment, I must say.
You wouldn't expect it. Bruno and Palmer. I don't know where that link comes from, but I'm happy to see Palmer get back into some goal scoring form. I know it was 2 penalties, but I really rate him as a player, and there's no doubt that he's had a poor run of form since that season 2 years ago where he was brilliant, but he's also had a lot of injuries and a lot of things to deal with that have hampered him. I don't think he's lost any of his quality. I still think he's a top player. I think once Chelsea find a little bit more stability, they're still trying to find it as a team, but they're getting closer to that. I think he'll shine a little bit more. So, but that is an interesting point on Bruno. I would say United, please don't. We've got to speak about this in a later episode, who United should sign this summer. But for me, they cannot be going for big, huge names. They have to just go for players who fit their mold and who are young and hungry. And not that Chelsea would ever sell Palmer, to be fair. Yeah, let's move on to some of the fixtures coming up this midweek. So we have games tomorrow on Tuesday, games on Wednesday, and then obviously Arsenal against Brentford on Thursday night. Looking at the fixtures, I think There's a lot of interesting ones that we've discussed. Tottenham against Newcastle, that's a huge game for both teams, really. How could you see this one going?
I see this one going. I think it'll be an interesting one. I think Tottenham need to come out. I mean, regardless of regardless of recent events, as I said, it's a must-win game for them. I'm not saying that it means less. I'm not saying it means more for them than say Newcastle. I'm sure Newcastle, it'll mean a lot for Newcastle to win that game as well. But for Tottenham in particular, and all the you can say the turmoil and all the noise from the fans obviously and about Frank, etc. It's a massive game for them, because I think after tomorrow they've got a 12-day rest 12-day rest for the North London derby. Now still will have played 3 games in that time. When I saw that, and I thought to myself, I'd much rather be in Arsenal's shoes, because you don't want a 12-day recovery going into such a massive game. You'd want to play at least maybe another 1 or 2, just to be a little bit more fresh. Arsenal will be a lot more fresh going into the North London derby next Sunday, so that's for sure. And if you think about it, it's only it's Brentford on Thursday. Wigan in the FA Cup, you would have most likely rotated for anyway. And obviously, I know you got Wolves away next Wednesday, because obviously as a result of the Carabao Cup final, that game was rescheduled. But even then, you could even afford to maybe rotate a little bit against Wolves as well in their current position. I'm not saying make wholesale changes. By all means, respect your opponent, but you can still rotate a few, a bit here and there. I still think, for me, it actually plays into Arsenal's hands. You want to be fresh. I know it's 3 games is a lot, 3 games in 10 days, but hey, that's football. That's why that's why players live the dream. Playing in all these big games, and I know things can change between that now and then. I think Arsenal going into that North London derby, they'll feel fresh. They'll be desperate to get themselves on that pitch. Try and win the game. Having a 12-day recovery, and look, Humzah, I can say this because I've seen, maybe not with games of that magnitude. I've seen Brentford have long, well, not long recoveries, but I've seen them have recoveries of a similar duration. So when we played Villa at home last year, that was our first game in 10 days, because we didn't play in the FA Cup. And I can literally tell you, having watched that game, the players look like they're just met at the pub an hour before kickoff. And they didn't even know each other's names. Literally, I can tell you this, having a really long layoff is not beneficial at all. As you said, having seen theirs and Arsenal schedules, I'd much rather have Arsenal's.
I think you're right. And I think 7 days, weekly games is just about okay with what United have, and no other competitions. They have 1 Premier League game to focus on a week, but 12 days is a lot. That is a lot, especially when you're not on great form. You want to get back out there and put some things right. You don't want to be thinking of a potential defeat or bad result against Newcastle. You don't want to have that lingering. Let's speak a little bit about, let's end on this Thursday night game between Brentford and Arsenal at the G-Tech, 8 p.m. Brentford on great form, Arsenal on decent form. I would say with Arsenal, they're not playing their best football as they have done in parts of this season. Brentford are playing good football. We spoke a little bit earlier about Brentford's ability to use the long ball and to play up to Thiago. I would say actually that's one of Arsenal's strengths, in that if Thiago gets in a battle with one of Gabriel and Saliba, it's going to be very difficult for him. But can you get in behind the Arsenal defense? That's going to be something interesting to look out for. As a Brentford fan, what are your thoughts on, what are your expectations on the game, and how could you see it going?
Look, Humzah, I think they'll go into it with the same mindset that they perhaps went into the games with against Newcastle and Aston Villa just this week. These last 8 days. Of course, they're not Brentford aren't favourites to win, even having the home advantage. Of course, Arsenal are where they are for a reason. But that doesn't mean that obviously Brentford will just lay down and have their bellies tickled. They will go out there and give it their all. Whether Andrews reverts, I mean, I personally hope he doesn't, but I hope in the event that he reverts to maybe a 3-5-2 and plays with Ouattara and Thiago as a duo. Thiago being the target man who can Ouattara providing runs off the ball. and obviously getting behind in very sturdy and mean Arsenal defense. That could possibly happen. I really hope he sticks with the 4-3-3 for this one. It'll be an interesting matchup and battle. I'm looking forward to the reason I'm actually quite looking forward to this is because that we've actually got like a more or less fully fit strength squad now. When we went to the Emirates back in December, we made we made quite a few wholesale changes, which, ended up being disastrous. Dropping Thiago, Collins, Damsgaard, Henderson. At least two of those players will start on Thursday. And I can literally tell you, just on a side note, resting your players for a more winnable game has never, ever, and will never, ever work. And let me just tell you that. So hopefully Brentford go full strength for this. I think they will. I hope they will. I can see Brentford maybe, because I think, as you said, with that Man City record against Fulham, beating them was 18 successive times at home. Look, you expect them to beat Fulham at home, and the gap is 3 points. I think it plays into Brentford's hands, because even though I know Brentford are in a bit of a dogfight for Europe, so are literally chasing a title. So I think that sort of plays into Brentford's hands a bit. Is the fact that they can still go out there, play their game, try and, you pardon the pun, sting Arsenal on the counter. I think it's going to be a good game, and I think Brentford have a very good chance of getting a result. A win would be fantastic and memorable, but a draw certainly would not be the end of the world. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on Thursday night. I think Brentford will get something, and I think that I have a feeling that might frustrate them and get a draw.
This is your key to winning the game or getting a result from the game. Your key is to sit deep, absorb as much pressure as you can. I know you're playing at home, so it is different if you're playing at the Emirates, but frustrate Arsenal, because we're not brilliant at breaking teams down. What we are good at is if you give Arsenal a sniff, they've got the quality players to punish you on that end, right? They're very good if teams, they're very good at spotting weaknesses in teams. But if you sit back, and maybe if you do go with a 5-back, that could be the way to do it in the first half, potentially. Your biggest benefit, and it is obvious, right? But if you were to go a goal ahead, if you were to put Arsenal under that pressure, I don't think that would bring the best out of Arsenal. I think that they would really panic. Saying that, from Arsenal's side, I do see us probing, and I do see us on the defensive end. It's not a secret, is it, that Arsenal are the best defensive team in the world? I do think potentially Brentford's long balls, not that you're a long ball team, but I do feel like we'll be able to deal with Thiago. Saliba dealt on the weekend with, who's Sunderland striker? Robbie, yeah, dealt brilliant with him and his physicality on the weekend. So I feel like we can neutralize that strength. Ouattara could be a bit of an issue for us, because as you draw us in, if you were to play on the counter, that's where a threat could come. So it's going to be a real challenge for Arsenal. This is, honestly, Uzzi, if I compare this to the Sunderland game on the weekend, for example, or even some of our games before that we played. I just have a look back. The Chelsea game at home, the sort of Leeds game away. I know Ellen Road's difficult, but this game does worry me a little bit. So I'm curious to see. How this one goes. We'll be watching intently. Are you reporting at the game?
I'll be there, don't worry.
Yeah. So we'll have a good debrief afterwards next Monday. But Uzzi, that's it from me. Great episode as always. This one's gone nearly an hour, which just shows how much there was to talk about this weekend. And hopefully next Monday we can have just as good an episode.
Great to speak, Humzah. Always a pleasure to be on the show.